Joining us now is Washington Post reporter Carol Leonnig. She is the author of the new book, Zero Fail, The Rise and Fall of the Secret Service. Ms. Leonnig, congratulations on this new book. Thank you so much for being here tonight on the eve of your pub date. I really appreciate you making the time.
Thanks for hitting all the really important points of the book, Rachel. You know, you supported this reporting early on. You focused on it way back in 2014, and I'm glad to be here to share everything else I've learned since then.
Well, thank you for saying that. First of all, I'm going to hold up the book so people can key on what it looks like, too, because you should buy it. This is one of those books that will go down as sort of the seminal work, the determinative work in this field. But I have to say, Carol, more than any individual anecdote or any individual scare that I read about in the book, all of which have stuck with me, more than that, I am struck by a gnawing fear that this agency, for all sorts of interesting and explicable reasons, isn't that good at what they do, that they're kind of a hot mess. And it makes me fearful for the current administration. I have to ask if that's where you have also landed overall in taking this deep look at this agency.
Yes, I fear that the compulsion to write this book was because, I landed in this beat by accident. I was covering what was then the most humiliating scandal in the Secret Service's history. The Hooker Gate of Cartagena, agents having prostitutes in their room, getting smashed, while they're supposed to be securing the city for President Obama's arrival. But what I found in talking to these agents and meeting more of them was that there was something much more horrifying underneath that or behind that curtain. And that was they really feared that the president would be shot and killed on their watch. They knew they were being run ragged. They knew their tools were outdated, and they couldn't deliver on what they knew was a zero-fail mission. They can't lose one time, and yet they're gasping to try to keep up.
You report that on that last point that I was discussing, that the Biden administration went so far as to ask for the entire presidential detail to be switched out, essentially, between the Trump administration and the Biden administration, in part because of the worries that at least some elements of the Secret Service may have been corrupted, may have been brought over to one political side during the Trump administration. What can you tell us about that request and how that was ultimately resolved?
There were transition advisors who were having informal conversations with people they knew inside the Secret Service, people they knew from previous times, agents who protected Biden when he was vice president. And what they were hearing was making their skin crawl. There were people who were supervisors on the detail who had MAGA hats in their offices. There were agents on the protective detail who were all wearing red ties on the day of the election in solidarity with President Trump. And as you've shared from my book, there were social media postings in which, again, members of the Presidential Protection Division were championing and cheering the attack on the Capitol, questioning whether or not President-elect Biden at that point was legitimately elected. If the most elite protection agency in the world is questioning whether or not Biden is president, there's a reason to be concerned, at least on the part of the transition advisors, about whether he is safe in their arms. At the end of the day, the Secret Service did change many of the supervisors of that detail, many of them, to install people that Joe Biden knew from previous eras when he was vice president, so that he would have some comfort of the familiar, comfort of people that had protected him in the past and protected Jill Biden in the past.
What was the ultimate disposition of the Secret Service official agent who was moved into the Trump White House to take a political role and then moved right back into the Secret Service as if he could still then play some sort of nonpartisan technocratic role? I had known something about that story. I had not known that he had moved back to the Secret Service as an assistant director.
He's an assistant director for training. He's very close to the current director, Jim Murray. at the president's request, at President Trump's request, he liked his detail leader so much, Tony Ornato, that he asked for him to be temporarily assigned, almost like on a detail, as the Deputy White House Chief of Staff. In that role, the Deputy Chief of Staff and former Secret Service leader was key in clearing the Lafayette Park outside the White House for the June 1 march that the president had to show how tough he was and that he was a law and order president prevailing over the protesters of George Floyd's murder. That same Deputy White House Chief of Staff was critical in planning the president's rallies as COVID spiked. And that ultimately led to 300 Secret Service officers and agents that summer either contracting COVID or being exposed to COVID so that they had to quarantine away from their coworkers. It was a sort of amazing thing and it infuriated so many Secret Service alumni because this is an agency that prides itself on objectivity, political independence. As they say in the agency, the people elect them, we just protect them. But in this instance, you had a Secret Service leader working as a political entity and arm of President Trump.
Yeah, and it's one thing to think about somebody ex-Secret Service then taking on a political role. It's a whole other thing if that person then finishes that and goes back to the Secret Service. That's the part of it that just seems impossible and intolerable. Carol Leonnig, Washington Post reporter, 3-time Pulitzer Prize winner, the author of Zero Fail, The Rise and Fall of the Secret Service, which comes out tomorrow. Carol, thank you for this public service and congratulations on an incredible accomplishment here. Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.